Hey, this is Madeline Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio.
And we got lots to talk about today.
There is a whole ton of stuff to talk about, and we've got a few people lined up that we're hoping will join us and enlighten us on a few things. I've certainly had some messages about host Celine's tweets, which have featured us over the last week or so. So anyone that's been on Twitter might have spotted those. Hopefully he's going to explain what the fabulous scrolling snippet is that he has been teasing us with all week. It'll be good to find out more.
Yeah, shout out to host Celine for promoting our room and showing some really cool things that we're going to be talking about today.
So perhaps we will start with talking about Twitter Spaces analytics, which we have discussed over the last couple of weeks. And we've been talking about how much we'd really like more analytics and some more data from Twitter Spaces. And this really backs up what we've been saying in that it looks like it's on the horizon, potentially. Alessandro Paluzzi has tweeted out a screen grab that makes me think it might be closer than we were even hoping. Madeline, what do you think?
Yes, I was really excited to see the screenshot. We put it in the nest. We'll have it in the show notes for our podcast listeners. But yeah, he's showing that they're working on an actual section for analytics for our spaces, which, many of us have been very vocal about. We would like to have more analytics. So this really shows that this is something behind the scenes they're working on. And so there are third-party tools that have services like this. And you and I have both tested some of these and, tried this out. But it would be so nice to just have the information right in Twitter, from Twitter directly. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I think so. And what this also does is actually confirms that those analytics at the moment seem to be that they're going to be available for hosts and co-hosts mainly. So, that they're not going to be analytics that just anyone who's been involved in the space can see. So if you're a listener, then you're probably not going to be able to see them. But hosts and co-hosts will have that extra layer of data, which is just going to be so useful. I really hope they don't hold out too long to push this one live.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'd like to get this as soon as possible, but it was very recently where hosts and co-hosts do get the ability to see how many people were in your room live, how many people have watched the replay. So if you're a host or a co-host to a room, as soon as your room ends, you're able to go and do the playback and it will pop up and show you just as a co-host or host, you'll see those numbers. If you're just a listener, it will just show you a total number. So they're giving us a little bit of statistics there, which is great, but I want more. I would like more information. So hopefully soon, this will all come to light and we'll be able to have all that.
Yeah, I mean, just having the numbers is kind of first layer. As ever, we always want a little bit more. I'm sure we'd really like lists of who interacted during the space, how long someone spoke for during the space. All of those kind of data points would be super interesting to the data geek in me. But yeah, this is a great first step to see that it is actually, looks like it could be becoming a real thing. So yeah, really excited about that piece of news to kick us off.
Yeah, and I also shared an article where they talk about this and show that screenshot. So a little bit more details if anybody would like to, read more on this. There's more information. So that's what we have for Twitter Spaces today. Now there's some Clubhouse news, right? We got some things to talk about with Clubhouse.
Yeah, that's right. So the big news over on Clubhouse is that they have enabled the chat feature over there. Again, this is something that we've been kind of trailing over the last few weeks. We had a great discussion around whether or not we need in-room chat on social audio platforms, whether or not, if we're in listener mode or, really thinking audio-centric, do we really want to be typing away in a chat box? And during that discussion a few weeks ago, my mind was actually changed in some ways, and I could definitely see a point to having a chat room. Well, here it is. It went online late last week after we'd presented All Things Audio on the Wednesday. I think it came live on the Thursday. And it's looking good. I mean, Morgan Evitz has sent a great rundown to me. So huge thank you, Morgan, giving me kind of your overview of it. He says that the chat is really quick to access. So as a listener, you're in there, you swipe right in the room, and you can access it straight away. So really quite intuitive. And essentially, it's a function that's actually enabled by the moderators. So if you're hosting the room over there, then you're the one in charge of whether or not your room is going to have this feature. So it's not something that you necessarily have to have, but it is a function and a feature that is there. You can also, as the host, you can pause that chat at any time and then resume it at any time as well. The chat is saved to the replays. So if you're listening back to something, you can actually see the chat that happened during the time that it was live in the room. You can't add into that once the room has finished, but you can scroll through the whole thing as a transcript, which is quite cool as well. You can delete your own message, the mods can delete a message, and the room creator can delete messages after the room ends, which is also quite a useful feature and something that's been thought about there. In terms of things that they're still perhaps thinking about and getting to grips with, Morgan certainly highlighted a really good point in terms of what if you're moderating, how do you moderate a text message that might be in a language that you can't read, which is a really interesting point. And also for larger rooms, potentially there might need to be these sort of quicker speed controls, like a way to erase the whole chat if that's needed in the moment, in a similar way to the way that we can mute the whole room if we suddenly feel like we need to, and things are kind of going in a direction that we're not happy with as moderators and hosts. So yeah, it seems like generally it's been well received. I think I haven't heard anybody kind of saying that it's not a useful thing. It's right there in the bottom icons alongside the share and the clip icons. There is now a little speech bubble which will alert you to the fact that the chat is in the room, and you get the usual kind of visual notifications that you might expect. So a little red dot when there are unread messages, and a little number of messages next to that chat icon as well. So yeah, it's rolled out on iOS and Android, and if you've used it, then do consider letting us know when we open up the mics what you thought of it, and where you think it might go, and what the improvements and changes might be.
Yeah, and I just shared a few things in our nest. We'll have it in the podcast show notes as well. But we have Michael Sterling had a tweet about it, and he also shared the blog post directly from Clubhouse that talked about this. And there's a screenshot showing what you were just describing of, what it looks like at the bottom. And it also mentions in here, and I think this is really great, that when a room is over and you're listening to the replay, you can still see the chat. And I think that's a great idea. So I'm glad they're including it for the replay as well.
Yeah, I think that is an extra, someone's thought about that, and that's very useful. And also the fact that the creator can then go in and actually delete anything from that lasting transcript that they're not too happy with is also a good point as well. I was quite interested in the fact that Clubhouse, there was actually a room over there titled "Don't Talk, Just Chat," which is a really interesting spin on it. Like, they're literally a social audio platform. They've been really pushing the whole idea of having conversations, listening to each other, hearing each other's voices to make connections. But now we've got this chat feature. These kind of rooms are most definitely going to pop up, where you're literally joining essentially a massive WhatsApp group of unknown people, probably, where you can just sit there and chat to each other. So, it's different. It's definitely different use cases that are going to pop up and crop up with the more different features that come online. But I found that quite amusing.
That was really interesting. And I'm so glad you saw a room that had that, where they just encouraged people to use this new chat feature instead of talking. So fascinating. Thanks for mentioning that. Also, we've got some news from LinkedIn. They're debuting their own podcast network. It's like super interesting. I just shared the article in the Nest. We'll also have it in the show notes from TechCrunch. What do you make of this?
Yeah, so this is super interesting. So LinkedIn bringing out its own podcast network, which is going to feature in-house shows from LinkedIn News, as well as, they say, programs from industry figures. So, yeah, all definitely with an eye on this, on a professional, on a corporate audience. These shows will be, very much curated and created specifically for the LinkedIn audience. But yeah, just a real huge push from LinkedIn really on audio at the moment, isn't there? I mean, we've talked about the whole LinkedIn live audio events. Now this announcement that they're going to be kind of diving into podcasting as well. And yeah, I just think it really shows that the platforms are seeing the value in creating audio content, which is really fantastic. So yeah, these podcasts are basically going to be created for the podcast network, and they will be available on LinkedIn. They will also be available on different podcast apps like Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well. And if you're basically following the hosts and you subscribe to their newsletters and things over on LinkedIn, then you'll get access to them via the feed. So yeah, it's a really interesting move for them, I think. What do you think about it, Madeline?
Oh, I'm super excited about this because I think this really is in line with what LinkedIn is all about, bringing the professional audience together. And I think having podcast programming around that would be super smart. So I'm really excited to see what all they put together, because right now they're just saying some in-house shows from their LinkedIn news team. That sounds interesting. But then also programs from industry figures. They haven't said who, but I figure it's going to be some good names and people that we're going to want to listen to. So I'm really eager. It doesn't say when this is coming out, though. It didn't seem to give any kind of timeline. It just seems more like it's something that they plan to debut soon.
Yeah, I mean, I think it says something about later in the spring. So I think it's not too far out. One of the podcasts potentially will appear. Not too far away, which is quite cool. The other thing that I've just been drawn attention to, and a big thank you to Paul Armstrong, who's in the space today, is running back to our friend Alessandro Paluzzi, who I think we might have to actually introduce as a guest on the show at some point. I've just added it onto our Notion board, Madeline, for you to have a look at. But it looks as though Twitter is working on podcasts.
Oh, yeah, I see that you just posted this in here. Let me get this into the nest, if you give me a moment. But wow, I love following people like him because it's a really way to know like what's going on, what are they working on, because him and Jane Wong are really great about sharing stuff that's being worked on before it's live, like here, they're able to uncover with the magic of whatever it is they do. And it's super interesting. So I'm going to put this tweet into the nest so you can see what we're talking about here. But wow, I like the idea of podcasting coming to Twitter. You and I are podcasters, and this is like music to our ears. So yeah, this is great. So it sounds like, LinkedIn is jumping on this. Now Twitter is like, they're all doing the same things. Do you find that interesting, Suze, that like one starts something and then everybody else follows suit?
It's a bit like the podcast conga, maybe. They're all going around and they're just joining on the back and then just sort of tweaking it to their own audiences, I guess. But I think the thing is, audio has just become such a hot content topic. People really are finding the value in creating it. People are listening to it. And so, of course, these platforms are going to want their piece of it. Hoselina has also messaged and said that Jane Wong has actually corroborated this as well. So this particular tweet that we're looking at here from Alessandro, I think that was only put out about half an hour ago. But what it's showing essentially is a kind of sidebar menu, which is headed by Twitter Blue, which is a subscription from Twitter. Then it's got your top articles, spaces, so you could look through your spaces. And then at the bottom, there is the microphone icon and the word podcasts. So yeah, super interesting. And again, another, just another amazing thing to watch and see, and be part of, really, in terms of what's happening with audio on these social platforms.
Yeah, it's a screenshot of the navigation. So interesting how it's showing spaces on there, which would be, of course, for the Spaces tab, but maybe also for the new analytics that are coming. But then this own podcast section. So I'm super excited. I'm almost speechless. It's like, wow, podcasting coming to Twitter. And I'm going to be interested to know, is Twitter going to follow the same idea of LinkedIn where it's going to be their own programming, kind of like when you're on Explorer and you see all the, when you're looking at the trending stuff, and a lot of them are actually Twitter moments, right? When we click on and we just see tweet after tweet after tweet, those are Twitter moments, kind of like what we put together of our nest each week, is where you curate a group of tweets. So will it be something like that where they have an in-house team that's going to kind of curate some content? Or is it going to be something where anyone can have their own podcast through Twitter? Or are they going to have industry leaders, kind of like the way LinkedIn is talking about the way they're launching theirs? So definitely too early to know, but we'll definitely be keeping our eyes out on this for sure.
Yeah, and how is it going to link with Spaces? I can't believe that they won't have some kind of link between the two, whether or not that is supporting Spaces hosts to turn their content into podcasts that is then available via this other tab. It'll be really interesting to see how those two work together. I guess in a way, as we've been saying, the replays are essentially podcasts from Spaces. So is this just another way of being able to filter through those replays from Spaces, or are people going to be able to actually upload their podcast to a certain place on Twitter and have them, showcased? Will there be highlighted versions, sponsored versions, of different episodes and different shows? Yeah, there's so many questions, Madeline. We need the answers.
That's right. We need answers and we want them now. But we'll definitely be keeping an eye out, and we'll share that with everyone as this information becomes available. But definitely shout out to Paul for sharing this, and host Celine. I mean, I'm checking my DMs now and I see that, they both have were letting us know about this. So super cool to know. And anytime any of our listeners here uncover any news that you think we should be sharing, be sure to send a DM to Susan and I and let us know. So, we'll be able to share it with our next week's room. And if you're here live with us and you just happen to notice something like these guys did, put it in our DMs. I mean, we try to multitask and watch our DMs and notifications while we're hosting this room live with all of you.
Absolutely. Now, I think perhaps, Madeline, we should go back and speak to Hoseline and find out what this announcement is regarding the API development, the feature that we have been, being teased with all week here on Twitter. Hoseline posted a video showing the beginning of our space from last week. And it essentially shows, Madeline's profile picture with captioning of what she's saying, and then my profile picture and what I've said. And it kind of scrolls through. It's really interesting. Hoseline, welcome to All Things Audio again this week. Tell us more about it. What are we looking at?
So, in a few minutes, I'm actually going to bring up the developer that put this together. So I didn't want to come in and rush and talk about it. I also want to, you change the format. So I didn't want to change the format because you guys do fantastic with the reviews and things like that. So it's a fantastic tool. And I'm going to prolong this as long as possible so that I don't steal the thunder of the actual developer. And the other reason why I wanted to join early is I'm actually going to look at some of the data from this particular space. You have to be a speaker of this space. So I'm just going to get that going. So pretty much what it is that you get a, let's see, let me bring up last week's show. You not only get a video replay, but as the image showed, just like captions, each one of your statements that are closed captions becomes a knowledge nugget or a piece of content that you could share. So I didn't share this in the video, but under every single one of the audio clips, under the text, there's the ability to react, which is okay, but also the ability to share that particular audio clip with the person that said it as a tag, as includes their Twitter handle in it, which makes life so much easier. You could also add notes to any of the content that you have there. So it's a pretty slick design. There's a transcripts that's all tweetable that you could react with emojis, and then you could add notes to it all on your own page. And as the developer, as we wait in a couple minutes, should be here at 3:30, we'll go into more details about the feature of what the tool is able to they're developing into the future. I was able to provide some additional feedback to change the UI, but it is very, very slick. And I wanted to give just a snippet to give a tease of like the big picture without revealing the developer, which I already told Madeline about last year. So that's a hint as to who the developer is.
It is very slick, I have to say. It just that little video, it's a small video clip you attach to the tweet, but it's really cool. So I'm really eager to hear more about this for sure.
Yeah, it was wild because I recorded the entire screen. I had to crop the image, take out all the branding, and find a section that was pretty cool. And like the whole you sound good, I'm back and I'm feeling much better. I love that little exchange you guys had at the beginning, which I think was a classic. It was a great tease to incorporate into it. So it's very, very slick. It's just the first iteration, and in the first iteration I found it very, very cool. I'll describe it a little bit more as we prep for the developer to show up. So it lists on the left hand side when you're on the I'm looking at it from desktop. There, I don't think there's a mobile version just yet. So you see all the speakers that spoke into the space. Let me see. Okay, so you can click on them and it opens up their Twitter profile. And the key here, though, is something that I noticed immediately is that it almost, once you start looking at the way the data is presented, it has you thinking of speaking in tweetable bytes or in sound bytes, to make the shareability of your content that much better. Because each one of those segments, you could tweet it out and it's going to concatenate or shorten your, if you have a very long-winded statement like I'm doing now, it's going to cut it. So once you start seeing the way the information is laid out, it almost has your mind thinking, oh, how could I speak in almost tweetable segments so that it makes it easier for people to share the content of the space. So the other thing is when you hit the Twitter button, it actually links up to the space. It gives you the quote, and the quote is by the person that tweeted it or said it, the Twitter handle, which I thought was pretty cool. And it also includes their handle as well, the app that is developing it. So those are like the high level details. I don't want to, again, steal the thunder of the developer. They should be coming in just shortly. But I did want to do like a double promotion, if you will. Promoted them indirectly and then promoted you, and then built some excitement to come to this particular space to see the big reveal. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce, for those people that don't know, Gregarious, who is the founder of not only Zealous, but a variety of different fantastic things that we use on a regular basis. He put together, I'm not sure the actual name of it. He could probably give us the name of the tool that I highlighted. So Gregarious, if you would bless us with the explanation of the tool and let us know the future of what you have for it.
It's a little early. We just actually, we're calling it Zealous 1 temporarily, at least for now. But yeah, I guess the best way to describe what we're building is we're basically building meeting tools and conversation tools for communities. And so it turned, communities of people are having conversations sort of in lots of places, right? They're going to be happening in Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse rooms. Sometimes they're even on podcasts, town halls in your Discord or Slack, and then of course like Hangouts and Meet and one-on-one stuff as well. So we've been building a new set of tools to help basically make the asynchronous consumption of like audio content, for example, like this, better, so that the folks who can't make it to this real-time thing can be here, but also addressing some of the shortcomings, I guess, of like Twitter Spaces in particular, like where they disappear after 30 days and there's a whole bunch of work involved in actually like getting it out into the universe. So we built a new tool. One of our tools is our Twitter Space Archiver. And what it does is it actually ingests sort of your audio, the transcript automatically, but then it turns that into an interactive document so that anyone who sees it can basically come along and react to different parts of the transcript. They can reply to parts of the transcript, and they can also share out moments from that transcript as well. So it's an early prototype of the tool itself, but we're working on adding in more capabilities as we move forward. We're working on getting, for example, the reaction data that happens in real time incorporated, so we get a highlight reel automatically, and we're also working on generating audiograms automatically from those little utterances or those moments, spoken moments as well. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to give an example. Actually, let's see. I just imported Suze's. So here, let me just tweet this. Or I'll DM it to Suze and she can share it. But if you have questions, by all means, feel free to ask.
And check your DMs, Madeline and Suze, for a little bit more context as well.
Open, and I am waiting.
All right, I'm DMing Suze right now, an example of hers. By the way, if you all want to try it, feel free. The format, this is a little hard part. It's not a hard URL, but like you have to type it in right now because we don't have like a direct navigation to it technically. But it's zealous.one/Twitter/user/your username. And if you do that, you'll actually it'll automatically scan your timeline and ingest any recorded spaces that you already have there. It's not perfect yet, so it doesn't grab everything. Like if you retweeted someone else's thing, it may not see it. But there's a way to add spaces that maybe you were part of to that list. Also, if something gets indexed and you were a participant in it, it'll automatically show up on your page. And also going forward now, we'll automatically back up your recorded spaces for you and convert them into this interactive format.
And can you share that link one more time for everybody?
Sure. It's zealous.one/Twitter. How about this? I'm going to tweet it out and you can share one.
That would be awesome. If you could tweet it and put it in the nest, that would be great.
It only works on recorded spaces, by the way, because one, we don't want to violate any terms of service, but also like we just think it's not like we want people to make sure they know they were being recorded, so we're not going to do it to stuff that wasn't recorded. We technically can, but we won't. We also have support. We have a Zoom for sort of communities that actually allows you to host collaborative meetings with other folks. So that's another tool in the suite. And we also have our live streaming suite, which I think Joselina's seen and many of you have used before, which allows us to stream out to Facebook and Twitter and other places. And we actually been testing uploaded files or ingesting files. So we could ingest a podcast or soon like Discord audio and stuff like that as well.
So essentially you'd be able to upload a podcast and get, again, like those shareable snippets that you could then push out onto whatever platform you wanted.
Yeah, the podcast is a little interesting because we'd love to be able to, like, for example, if you've already done a transcription, to ingest your own transcription that you've done so that we can marry it up. But we also automatically run our own transcription if we don't have a transcript available. Interesting.
And you said potentially audiograms as well, which are one of my all-time favorite ways of audio marketing. So that sounds good.
Hopefully late next week, probably. We're doing a database migration right now, but hopefully by next week we'll have a slight prototype of audiograms as well that are automatic from any utterance that you see in your actual Twitter space.
And I think Joseline was saying about how the snippets are obviously limited to the character limitation of a tweet. So will there be any way of kind of threading those if there's a longer tweet?
Yeah, that's a good question. I will make note of that. I think that would be a really good feature for sure. Right now, we're doing it super low tech, so it kind of opens up Twitter for you and you kind of get to edit down. I have a lot of reservations about this, by the way, because I also one of my fears is people like sort of like cutting or snipping what you said and taking it out of context. I mean, obviously they could do that anyway, but yeah, threading it would make sense actually, and we just need to use the API to generate the message as opposed to sort of just using the sort of shortcut we have in place right now.
Yeah, I mean, certainly one of the things that we've been discussing and Hostline chatted about it last week on All Things Audio was around, making sure that whoever is able to access the audio or use it in any way is using it in the right way and not drawing from it in the wrong way. So it's a really interesting topic to get into, the ethics and morals of it as well.
Yeah, that's why I actually prefer the audiogram, because at least the audio is there and it can't be tampered, right? So if I'm saying you said something, like at least it is actually the thing you said, because we're constructing it as opposed to like you getting to edit it down to a thing. The audio files also, we're not going to make them available. We only make the host is the only person who'll be able to download them.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Well, this is super interesting. Thank you for sharing this with us today. I really appreciate it. Well, and just FYI, I've been using Zealous for quite some time because I got turned on to it from Hostline long time ago because, I schedule, I have 3 different rooms I co-host each week, and it's been a great tool just for allowing people to easily RSVP and schedule, so they don't miss these different rooms that I host. So thank you for having such a great tool.
We haven't gone away. We've just been busy building the stack.
Well, that's awesome. Like, hey, give us more features. I'll take it. So yeah, excellent. Appreciate it.
This is a question for Gregarious. Translations into other languages. Have you guys looked into that? Or
yeah,
a tool you could plug in that allows that to happen.
We'll do it. We will. Yeah. So we use, like for Twitter Spaces in particular, it uses whatever the transcription is that comes out of it. So if everyone's speaking Spanish and Twitter's interpreting that, it'll give us that back automatically. Okay. So our business model, like going forward, is basically sort of what we call like a community SaaS. And so for like $5 a month, basically you'll get a certain number of credits. You can use those credits any way you want. And so you'll have like things you could do. Like, for example, I want like higher quality audio in my meetings, or I want more storage, or I want translation automatically to different languages. Right. So those will all be things that you could use sort of your credits that you get every month to process with.
And there would be a little directory of options of where we could utilize those credits.
There'll just be services. So you basically like, you'll have to it's like sort of coin operated machine, right? So you put some change in there and it'll do things for you automatic, like based on what you tell it to do.
Oh, that's pretty funky. I wonder if there must be some engines, some language engines, right, that you could just connect with. Is that how that would work?
There are lots, but I think you're always free to take your data. It's always your data. You could take it and process it externally. I'm not sure how easy it would be for us to marry it back on though, if you do it externally.
Wow, this was. Thank you for making yourself available.
You bet.
Yeah, thanks so much, Gregarious. That's great.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's great information. And I added the tweet I just put in the nest from Hostline with the big reveal of this. Thank you, Hostline, for putting all the details of this into this tweet. I also just added it to the Twitter Moments that I have, and I'm going to put that back into the show notes. So if you came late or want to know more about things we talked about today, is all in that Twitter Moments tweet with all the tweets for today.
We brought Michael up as a speaker, also known as @Audio Mentor. I wanted to chat to Michael because he actually did a really good roundup of how social audio has been used this week in a real kind of news sense to cover what is happening in Ukraine and Russia. And just the fact that social audio has been used in this way has just been astonishing. The different conversations that have been going on, the thousands of people that have been joining those spaces, and the fact that those spaces and rooms have been going on for hours and days at some time. I really felt like I was not the right person in the right position to really talk about it by myself, but I did jump into Michael's room at the weekend where he was talking about all the different ways people have been using social audio since the invasion started. And yeah, I just wanted to chat with you, Michael, a little bit about what you'd found out. You put together a fantastic blog that's over on your website, which I think is actually parked up in the nest, and will certainly be in the Twitter moment and show notes. But yeah, what was kind of your main observations really from the last few days on social audio platforms on this?
Yeah, thanks, Suze. It's been really interesting because social audio has once again sort of brought the world together in conversation. We saw that with the pandemic. We've seen that with other things. There was conflict, between Israel and Palestine last year. But like, what's been interesting is that Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse, that's mainly where I've been, have been hosting 24/7 updates on what's been going on with the invasion, to the point where I've been in spaces where, there are veterans, other people who have been a part of the military or public policy or whatever, who are discussing all of the latest relevant and legitimate information coming in from news media and reports from Ukraine. And then they're discussing it with their background because they were a paratrooper or whatever. And, it's been really interesting. I've learned a lot about military tactics, about global political things, about global finance, being in all of these spaces and just listening in. I haven't actually said anything in them, but just being able to sort of sit in the corner of the room while other people who know a lot more than I do about these things and just listening to them and taking it in and processing it in that way, it's been really, really interesting. And to the point of the blog post, I mean, yeah, in the early days of the war, there were some spaces on Clubhouse. There was one that got more than 100,000 people in the first few days. We had a Reddit talk, actually, that ended up having close to 1 million people who came through it. And then there was actually a space here on Twitter that was within the first, I think, day of the conflict starting that got 2 million. That was the report from the host. So as we speak, there are still 24/7 rooms going on Clubhouse and Spaces, and I have them in the blog post too. Well, one of them, I think, the Twitter space is no longer running, but the Clubhouse room, I think, is from that blog post. But yeah, it's just really thoughtful people who know their stuff all throughout the world coming together in conversation and updates on what's going on. Humanitarian efforts, discussion about political things, financial things, technology, how the war is affecting global internet goings on, and information warfare, those sorts of things. Lots of interesting conversations. So I'll plant my mic there. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I mean, I'm really interested in understanding, do you think people were joining these social audio spaces primarily for kind of information or for that sense of community and solidarity and support? I'm kind of, obviously we can only kind of speculate as to why people might have joined them, but in such huge numbers, what's kind of your thoughts on that?
It's just, it's kind of been really more of the same from social audio, just a new topic to discuss. I've been in rooms where there has been conspiracy theories and denials that Russia is actually invading Ukraine and things like that, and people shouting back and forth at each other and just throwing out completely unverified information and so on. And then there's others where people are very careful and they're very deliberate about the information that they release to the people listening in the room. They're very thoughtful about the things that they say. There was another space, I've seen several, about the people from the African diaspora who are in Ukraine and having a difficult time leaving that. There have been spaces dedicated to that. Just kind of anything that can come up with this war. People are starting spaces and they're talking about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been seeing those too. And over the weekend, I stumbled into one, this guy named Walter Lake, and the ones that he's been hosting are phenomenal, and I've been learning so much. So I think Spaces has been really instrumental in bringing people together to talk about the conflict and share real information, real, factual news of what's going on. So we can all, have an understanding of what's happening over there.
And in terms of kind of social audio practicalities, Michael, you were also live on Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces at the same time when you were discussing, when you were hosting your own room over the weekend on this. What platform were you using to do that?
Oh, that is a great question. Let me explain a little bit of my technology setup, and so that will sort of explain how I do it. I have a professional condenser microphone I'm talking into, going into a Rodecaster mixer. And the Rodecaster actually has the ability to connect to both Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces at the same time and facilitate the conversations going back and forth so that, you don't have Twitter Spaces feeding back to itself, Clubhouse feeding back to itself. But people can talk across sort of that bridge from platform to platform because the Rodecaster has that built into it. There may be other services, third-party services that can do it, but really it's just sort of my technology that I have that's able to do it in a special case like that.
Oh, that's super interesting. I'd kind of assumed that you were going via a third party and that there was kind of a distribution that was happening somewhere.
No. I mean, if I wanted to sort of spread the audio feed from the program out to multiple platforms, I would want to look at something like that, a Restream, or I think there's other platforms too. But this is actually, and you'd mentioned it, Susan, our DMs, but I connect Clubhouse through an app on my computer called Club Deck, which is a third-party, unofficial desktop application for Clubhouse. And then I connect to Twitter Spaces with my phone using TRRS going into the Rodecaster. So it's USB from the Rodecaster to the computer for Club Deck and Clubhouse, and then TRRS from the Rodecaster to the phone for Twitter Spaces. And then the mixer does the link between them. Hope that helps.
Yeah, that's great. I'm just, in terms of, as I say, these spaces, people are obviously listening. In terms of getting a message out there, if you can broadcast over onto both platforms at once, then, you're maximizing the audience. So I guess, in terms of being able to do that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting because there's been week to week different audiences on the different platforms. Like this week, we didn't have anybody come into the Twitter space when we were talking about the war and things like that. We had a really great conversation on Clubhouse. Flip that the other way. Last week, we really didn't have anybody come to the stage on Clubhouse, but we had a lot of conversation in Twitter Spaces, especially about the new reactions, the hearts and so on. So it's just kind of whoever shows up that day, we have a conversation, and sometimes it's mostly on one, and sometimes it's mostly on the other, and sometimes it really is very engaged across the platforms.
I mean, I was joking about needing 8 arms just to moderate this one Twitter space here. And, I've got Madeline's obviously dealing with the nest and doing an awful lot of the behind the scenes stuff too. I'm not sure how we deal with going across both platforms. I'm sure we'd manage, but, it's an extra level of moderation there, I think. So, yeah, but well done you. And yeah, fantastic piece that you put together there. And it was a joy to kind of join and kind of hear you very clearly kind of laying out how people have been using social audio in such a difficult time and during such a huge news event. So, yeah, thank you.
And I'm sorry that for some reason, I guess I forgot to switch the toggle on for the space to record it ahead of time. So the Twitter space recording does not exist unless I dub the audio back into it. So you would need to go to the Clubhouse link to listen in, but it's there at that blog post. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Michael. Appreciate it. That's fascinating stuff. Suze, we have one more piece of information to share. Instagram is now making it easier to follow videos when you don't have the audio turned on. So they're adding these auto-generated captions. I think it's great that they're finally adding that to videos in Instagram. What are your thoughts, Suze?
Yeah, I mean, we have discussed the importance of captions on all of these different audio platforms a lot. And it is good to see that Instagram is going to be introducing these AI-produced captions automatically on its videos. I think they need to be sure that it's going to be a fairly good speech-to-text translation. Otherwise, I do think they could be in for a bit of a backlash. But automatic captions, that voice tech is coming on and has come an awfully long way just in the last kind of 6 months even. So, yeah, it's great to see it. It will mean that people don't have to go through kind of the extra layer of work that it is to add captions to their Instagram videos. And, yeah, this amazing stat in this 9 to 5 Mac article that we've got the link to here is that 92% of consumers watch videos with the sound off. I mean, I knew it was high, but that is an awful lot of people that you're, missing out on getting your message to if you're not adding captions to videos over there. So, yeah, really interesting to see them doing that, and great for not only, those who are hard of hearing, but for anyone who might want to know what's going on in the video but not have the sound on for any reason. So yeah, great accessibility and another tick in the box.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm really excited that news came out from Instagram. So lots of great information. Suze, I'm like on overload here. There's a lot of great stuff we talked about today.
We certainly did, an awful lot.
Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.